Good morning. I am doing a Facebook Live. I've been looking forward to like all week on how trauma and stress can manifest physically. So, if I can do this smoothly, which I think it's going to be smooth, on um, who Skylar and I have had a wonderful conversation, and I just kind of wanted to continue this conversation that we had with you guys because it was really beneficial for me. Hi, good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
Super good morning to you. It's like 7:30.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, like, we had a really good conversation, I don't know, like a week ago, was it?
Yeah.
And I wanted to continue it because, like, I really enjoyed speaking with you. Um, if you want to do a quick intro of yourself, I don't normally do intros for some reason on these lives, but if you want to do a quick intro of like who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Skyler Mechelle Weinberg, and I am a trauma educator and advocate. And I started my work primarily in nonprofit, and then I went to one-on-one direct services. And now I kind of just educate through writing and through working with NGOs and wellness providers and service providers of all kinds about trauma. Moving in that direction because I'm a survivor myself and kind of developed this understanding of where is there a lack in this field? Where do people see the gap in being heard and being believed? And where are the resources that need to be kind of allocated in a different direction? And so I thought, I have all of this knowledge, I have all of this experience. Where can I step in and kind of meet a bridge between the victims and the survivors who are not being met and those who need to be met? And so I decided to start working with those who are already passionate about this in the field, and this is what I do.
Awesome. Yes, and I think your work is so important, which is kind of what we're talking about today is a kind of a misunderstood element of trauma
Yeah.
that we're talking about the physical manifestation. And I think like people get it, like people get like, okay, like stress can cause, your heart rate to increase, right? Or it might
Mm-hmm.
cause stomach upset, but I don't think it's emphasized enough of like trauma, how it really impacts us. And how, I mentioned that book that I was reading, When the Body Says No,
Yeah.
and that, doctors aren't really asking these questions. When you're talking about you're going directly to the people who are working with these people who have trauma,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there is a need to really understand how it affects us on a lot of different levels. So to start this conversation, I always think like, what question do I want to ask my guest first? And I was thinking this morning, something I talked about with my partner last night is, I think some people think trauma has to be really severe and like
Yeah.
aggressive.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like there is a situation when I was really, really young, probably 5 or 6, and that it wasn't inherently like traumatic. Like if I explained it to you, you'd be like, oh, like that's nothing. Like that
Yeah.
was just playful or whatever. But to me, like I remember that instance and I remember that visceral feeling at like 5 years old of like, this doesn't feel good and being protective.
Yeah.
So kind of I wanted you to explore on that of understanding that trauma isn't always like rape necessarily, right?
Mm-mm.
It could just be how we perceive it in our body. And
Completely.
like how do you interact with people that are kind of misunderstood on that?
Yeah, so that's such a good and powerful question because it's something that I talk about a lot. I have a pretty prolific history in my background. I have 18 years of trauma. And so when I talk about that, there's such a human and natural response to go, oh, well, then I am not traumatized at all, and it's that immediate space. And that's so valid because at the same time, that's like a human protection level. It's going, oh, well, we're passing it off. We're kind of minimizing what we went through because it's too much to handle. And there's nowhere in the world that's educating us on the fact that our response to life in general is allowed and it's okay. And it's like, it's not bad. There's nothing inherently positive or negative about the way that we are responding to life. And it's our intimate autonomy that we get to do and feel and believe in our bodies. And what's happening is that disconnection line is going, this is not allowed. This is not okay. My reaction, my visceral child response to this event is bad and I shouldn't be feeling this. And then we're focusing on that singular event and going, okay, well, here's the solution. I either minimize it because look at all of these other things that are going on in the world, or I go and seek help. And that one source of help is going to give me one source of results, usually in a medical sense of whether it's emotional or physical or spiritual, just because not even maliciously, it's just trauma's not understood. And when I talk about trauma, it's such a wide scale. It's not a you were abused for 18 years. It's a death of a dog. It's a divorce. It's some teacher when I was in kindergarten spoke to me in a heightened level and it responded in my body in this manifestation in a way that I didn't know what to do with, but I felt. And then I was taught and trained by society and culture to either ignore that, minimize it, compare it, or seek a singular solution to it, which is usually like it's okay, it's fine, And so, and then it's that space of going, I am allowed to feel how I feel. And it's not actually the event that we're talking about, it's how I'm feeling and responding. And when there's a lasting result, like if you are here and present and you are feeling that 5-year-old's visceral response to that, that trauma that you're talking about, it means it was important to your body, and that's so okay. And so it's talking about like unpacking these like singular story narratives that we have about trauma and saying, how can I look at it from a whole body perspective? How can I look at it from a physiological, a mental, an emotional, a spiritual response and honor that in me? And usually what happens is that we get to do that, gain autonomous power, and then learn this like deeper trust with our bodies that teaches us so far beyond just trauma responses. It's like oh wow, I'm joyful and this makes me feel good. Ooh, this physical movement, which I'm sure you do a lot in your work, this makes my body happy and I get to choose that. And when I develop those like intimate, intricate, personal, juicy things with my body and my mind and my soul, like I'm empowered, and that's powerful.
Yeah. And I feel like kind of focusing too much on the trauma itself is almost disempowering, right? Like I know you don't agree with, and we had talked about this before, is I forget the term. It's like going back into regressive memories. What's the NDT?
EDSMR.
So, wow, it's totally off.
No,
So
you're
that
good.
so like going back into regressive memories and like focusing so much on the memories, because then I feel like there is like this kind of pressure to look at them and be like, well, that's not that bad, and minimizing, like I really think we minimize that, or don't be so sensitive. Especially like men get that a lot of be a man, like toughen up. But I think they're holding so much. People just in Jacksonville, like there was a shooting and he killed several people. And I think like men too, like they hold on to so much trauma, but they don't allow themselves to process it and feel that it manifests in a lot of really negative ways, obviously. But I love that you're saying is you're really honoring wherever your body is, and like allowing that without judgment is huge. You said the physical movement, like I process emotion through movement. And for a while, like I did label it. Like I was like, what is this? Like, why am I being so sensitive about this? Like, am I on my period? You know what I mean? First, like just experiencing it and being like, I don't know what the hell this is, but like it needs to go. Like it needs to be cycled through, and that there's nothing to attach yourself to.
Yeah. It's so important, and just there's no space for it right now. And so that's what, you're doing is so important. It's what like talking about it and having these intimate discussions is so invaluable, because it's an invitation. There's no demand for us to do this work, but there is an invitation to do it. And that's empowering of itself. I talk about a lot, like holding compassion with our bodies, because like for me, with my history, it's a natural tendency to go into survival. It's a natural tendency for my mind, body, and soul to go, we need to prepare because we're going to be hurt. And that's okay. Right. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. Like we're talking about, it's not an inherently negative thing to have your body go, I'm going to tense up and I don't like this, and that's that's allowed. And when we start inviting that compassionately, like going, I believe you, body, I hear you, even if I don't understand, like even if I literally have no understanding of why you're responding the way that you are, which is why I don't advocate for going back and like doing the regression memory, you know, relocation, is because I believe truthfully when we are safe and we need to, we will have the memories that we need. And I, you know, for me, like in the beginning, I wanted to have like a distinct timeline because that is how it's taught. It's like, if I know everything, then I will be free from it. And in truth, it's not about actually knowing everything. It's about how we feel. And that's everything. Because even if I can label out all of these historical lines of abuse, it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily talking about what they've done to me. And that is the lasting impact. That's what's going to carry me through life and how I'm going to respond to relationships and body work and emotion and everything. And so how do I start talking to those things in my body? How do I start developing conversation with myself that's different than what I was ever allowed to before? And that's like where we get into like the really intimate work that you're doing and that other people are doing that are so exciting to me, because it's just all about that safety that you're talking about. And that safety is paramount to, you know, feeling like an empowered individual.
I love that, because we just clicked really hard on that safety component, is that it's not talked about enough. And obviously I talk about safety in the physical sense. Like I always tell my clients, like the body needs to establish safety first before it allows us to move forward, right? Like we have to get permission first instead of like just pushing or like ignoring pain. So many people are used to pushing through pain physically or emotionally, right? Like thinking that they're being tough. And yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Like the body is gonna stop us. Yeah, I was just reading one of these comments too. She was saying, wow, ladies, I really needed to hear this today. So I got a little distracted. I try not to read comments like while we're on it so that we don't get off, but I think people are really responding to this. So I think we'll go over the comments after. Yeah, but just that permission and that reflection on feeling instead of like identifying with the problem so much. Laura just said, I get angry at myself for being angry. Like that's exactly it. Is we need to like allow that to move through us, especially as women too. Like I know for me, I'm always putting pressure on myself, like don't be too much. Right, like I say that all the time. Or I posted something the other day, like I'm learning to love my hunger, which my hunger is just like desire and a need and like, feeling like I need to go deeper, feeling I need this or whatever. And being able to accept what my body is naturally telling me.
And it's go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to point out too, this was something that came up in the book, and so I have in my head always when I go on these lives, I'm like, what points do I really want to make sure the audience understands this, is because we're talking about the physical manifestation of trauma too. And I think sometimes people can put blame on themselves of like, I have this autoimmune condition or whatever. And they put blame on themselves for having it because they say, oh, well, I created it because I had trauma and I wasn't able to deal with it. And can you talk about that? Like dissociating yourself from blaming yourself from getting sick?
Well, I mean, so I have an autoimmune disease. I have a couple autoimmune diseases. I developed them 10 years ago. And for me and my personal experience of them, I truthfully, what my body has been doing and what the conversations that have developed in myself and my healing, I understand that the development of my disease came from a space of going, I had no voice in my abuse and my assault. And my body is so powerful that it asked itself, like, it was like, if I am in pain, maybe I won't be hurt. Maybe that will be heard because my voice is not being heard. And so like, I know for me and my own personal experience of healing that when I dissociate from my emotion, my body screams a little bit louder. And so it's like you're not listening to me. Do I need to like have more pain until you do? Because it's this space of going, all I'm asking of you is to listen. Like that, it's I've seen it a couple times across the internet, and it's like this conversation of friendship development in the body. And I think it comes from a lot of like eating disorder, speaking events. And it's talking about like, body, I'm so sorry, I cannot wait to be your friend. And the body responds like, I've been waiting to hear that my whole life. And so it's like that development. It's that space of going, our bodies are so personally ours, regardless of what ailments or what responses they have or what disabilities they hold. Like, they are ours, and that is powerful, regardless of our ability with them. Like, they are our bodies. And how do we start developing conversation with them that takes away the blame and enters into friendship, takes away the frustration and enters into like kind of a union. Like, it's like a powerhouse of like, I'm not just a singular entity anymore. I have 3 parts to myself, and even more than that. But how do I start with my emotional, physical, and mental health and start to move away from this space? It's similar to me, like blame is so similar to comparison. It's the space of minimization. It's a space of like, I am unworthy. It's a space of, I don't deserve this. It's a space of like, I am scared. And like, for me, that's the root of it. Like, underneath all of the blame and comparison, what is the true emotion? It's fear. And fear is so okay. Like, it is scary. It is scary to have a disability. It is scary to have an autoimmune illness. It's scary to have trauma. It's scary to have a response going on in our bodies, whether we're doing physical work like you are, or doing emotional work, or just living life. And having this flare in ourselves, and I say flare because it's usually a heightened emotional response, and that's allowed as well. But when we don't understand it, when we don't have that conversation, it doesn't mean that we're less than someone who does, but how do we start listening in a very small way? It's like what I used to do with my clients when I was one-on-one. It was saying like, when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, if I have that physical ability, can I put my hand on my tummy or put my hand somewhere that feels comforting to myself, and just ask my body in those 30 minutes or 30 seconds or 60 seconds of brushing my teeth, what my body feels? And without going, why, how can I respond with, I believe you? And in that space, like, start to develop that little tiny opening for that fear to exist, to go, I'm scared about how I feel. I'm scared about not knowing why I feel this way. I'm scared about how my body isn't responding. I'm scared about how my body is. And then start to go, I believe why you're afraid. I don't need to know why, but I believe that you're afraid. I believe that you're angry. I believe that you're sad. I believe that you're depressed. I believe that you're anxious. I believe that you're panicked. And I'm going to be right here with you. And that's like, that is the most beautiful permission, because in truth, when we're doing the comparison game, when we're doing the shame game with ourselves, what we're doing is just prolonging that relationship, or like prolonging that development of relationship that we can have with our bodies. Because in truth, it's kind of like when we're kids and, our mom or our dad, if we have those, is going, why don't you just do your chores and then you can play? And then we prolong that. Like, I don't want to do my chores for 3 hours, and then I do them and it was like 5 minutes and then I get to go play. It's the same kind of thing. It's like, I'm prolonging this response because I'm afraid, and that's okay. And so why don't we just shrink that time? Instead of going, I have all of this work to do, why don't we just do 5 seconds and then 30 seconds and then like a couple times a week? Or when I work with Jess and I'm listening to my body, like, how can I start to develop that conversation intimately, but not in like a overwhelming, like, I have so much work to do and I'm so afraid,
For sure, because it is really intimidating. I talked about this on Saturday with some women in a workshop I did locally, and I was talking about the ways that women kind of dissociate from their body by, what do I say, they destroy it in their workouts, or they try to dominate their body and try to punish it and try to make it wrong and try to control it, right? And not listening and not trusting, and then also dividing. And I was talking about how we can create this kind of protection of our body through strength, where we're dividing maybe from men or from attention that could be harmful, or we divide from ourselves. So we start to disembody ourselves because we don't want to go there. Right? Like, we don't want to experience because we're afraid of what our body is going to express. I mean, it is really scary. even I know you wrote an article about also just being able to have sex after
Yeah.
sexual trauma, and I
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to read that, but I'm sure it's probably along the same lines of going back into that space of vulnerably sharing your body with somebody when you're like, I don't know if I can feel, you know, and
Yeah.
being numbed out from that. Yeah, and like that's a really real thing, like that numbed out feeling. That's part of why I love strength so much, is that you're coming back here. And I always talk about like how body is really home, but we don't associate it that way because we feel like it's been taken in so many
Yeah.
ways from, you know, it's been taken by disease, or I use the word, it's been robbed by disease, or we think it's been robbed by this person.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you're saying, it's ours. Like it's the one thing that is always intimately
Yeah.
ours, and we can't allow other, you know, diseases or disorders to control it. Like, and our job is just to listen and to form that friendship.
Yeah.
And I love that you say too, is not doing it so much to the point of overwhelm. I know with some of my clients, they would have to stop sessions,
Yeah.
you know, and be like, you know, I'm not feeling well. Like something's coming up. I feel like I'm about to cry. Like, can we continue this later? And like, I don't push them. I say,
Yeah.
okay, like we're going to get off the session now. And I want you to just, you know, be with yourself for a while, and that's it. And then like, get back to me when you feel like you're ready to share what just had happened. Is really important to not like shove yourself through that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because again, like that's not really listening and respecting the process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is anybody resonating with this? I'm seeing if anybody else wants to comment here, but I think this is a really good conversation.
Yeah.
I know Laura. Yeah. So Laura was saying, I minimized my severe lifelong stress and trauma because I wasn't raped or in a war zone.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm always preparing and protecting myself and always in survival mode.
Yeah. I believe her. I believe you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And understanding we all have different responses to this trauma too. And what's that book I'm also trying to get through? The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
These books are hard to read. Like
They
when I
are.
read them, my battery's about to die. I have 10% left. But when I read these books, like they're heavy.
Yeah.
They're talking about so much trauma. But in that book too, I know like your brain actually goes through chemical changes,
Yep.
and I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because again, we try to put blame on it. Like, why am I experiencing it this way?
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't perceive it this
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But it's like our brain, like my driving principle for my work is the body always seeks safety, right? So it's like it will literally do whatever, whether it's an autoimmune condition or changes in the brain where we get triggered by almost the most benign things.
Yeah.
Consciously we think they're benign, right? But it's always just a survival mechanism. It's always our body just being like, I want you to be safe.
Yeah.
I care about you, right?
Yeah.
And like reflecting that relationship back is hard.
So hard. And it's that space of permitting the frustration, permitting the confusion, permitting that. I think a lot of people feel like they need to be immediate friends with their body when they start this work.
Yeah.
And that frustration is so allowed. You know, it's I keep using that word allowed, but like that is my principle, like in my work, is that you're allowed to feel how you feel. And there is no like strict guideline to how you're going to navigate this. Like I talk about how, you know, you briefly brought it up, but it's that space of you can have someone who has identical traits, who walked through the same exact thing and have completely different response. And neither of them are greater or lesser than the other. It's that personal thing, which is why we talk about how our bodies are so powerful, because regardless of how they operate in the world, they are ours and they are so unique and so individual. And so it's that space of going, however you start to wade into these waters, and however fast or slow, or you try it once and it's way too much, and so you step back from it for 5 months or 5 years or 5 days. You know, it's like it is your absolute journey, and there's nothing wrong with it inherently. And so it's about developing like a community, which is why I started doing the work that I'm doing now, is because I feel like as a community, we need to start inviting this to be okay. Because why do we have these perceptions that it needs to look a certain way? My body needs to operate a certain way. I need to respond a certain way. Like it's this integration into this, like, ideal society or ideal person that just isn't attainable and isn't accessible. And it's that idealization that like trips us up so many times. And so it's like, I ideally would like to respond this way, but that's not how my body is responding right now. And so is it frustrating? Heck yeah. But is that like, does it mean that my frustration is going to allow me like permission to shut that part of myself off? Like, well, I can through strength and through armor, as you talked about, and in disembodiment, but eventually my body does keep the score. My body will come back to me with, hey, this is something that has happened to us. Can you listen? And that's what I mean, I started to develop that in my healing as well. I would go, like something would trigger me out in public and I just didn't have time to like really hold myself the way that I needed to. And so I would literally sit down with myself for 30 seconds and say, hi body, I hear you, I'm listening. There's no part of me that doubts what you're experiencing right now. I don't have time to honor you the way that you deserve. Will you remind me later that we need to do this work? And so it's like this reminder, that safety, that because our bodies, especially when we're so used to dissociating from them, are going to continue pressing, and that pain is going to get harder, that emotion is going to flare more. And that line was so important. It's like, I will come back to you, I believe you. And that's like developing safety and allowing me to remain embodied and allow me to do what I need to do out in the world, and then know that I can come back to my body. And that was like a really powerful tool that I started developing. And it allows me to have compassion too, because it's like, there's no way that I can control the fact that like this is going to happen and this is going to trigger me, but I can respond to my body in a way that tells itself that like it doesn't need to flare as loud as it is right now. It's allowed to, but I'm here to listen to it, and then I can come back to it. And maybe coming back to it happens a couple months from then, or it happens immediately when I get home. But again, there's no source of control, which is why there's fluidity in everyone's personal experience.
That is an excellent tool. And I've had to go through the same, like when my body was really not responding hormonally, and I was so frustrated where I just got to the point where I was like, that's it. Like, I just need to listen, and I need to honor it, and I need to stop pushing it so much and just like stay with it.
Yeah.
And I like that you're saying like it's okay to process it later.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a situation, right? Like I've been in a situation where I was triggered a bit in a public area, and I went in my car, and it wasn't until I was able to get home and I was relaxed with my partner that I was able to, like, my body was like, okay, like we're safe now. Yeah. And I was able to process it, and he was able to kind of be there with me, which was really good too. My phone might die.
Okay.
But I love this conversation. I charged my phone before we got on, and then like the Facebook Lives just like, suck all the life out of it. Does anybody know what time it is?
My phone won't show because I'm live.
I know. That's why I usually ask the audience if they're able to tell us a time. No? Somebody tell us the time? Probably about 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
This is probably one of my favorite. 11. Okay, so yeah, like a half hour. Yeah, guys, you should connect with Skyler, because you are really important in this work. Like, that's why I really wanted to get on here and talk with you. And that, like, our first conversation was just, thank you guys, was just really important. Like, I think the work that you're doing is very, very important. People need to understand this, and that permission. I mean, now I'm thinking about, like, that's what I introduce into my work a lot too, is like, we're not putting blame onto why this hurts or this is being painful or why there's restriction here. Like, it just is.
Yeah.
Our job is to just understand it and be able to establish safety again.
Yeah.
Without blame or shame or judgment.
Yeah. And you do online coaching, right? So you can go, like, you have global clients?
I do.
Awesome.
I've worked with, like, I think 7 countries now.
That's exciting.
Which is super fun. I know. Like, now I'm like, now I actually want to travel to those countries. Because now I've been playing with more local stuff, and there's a different element of like being in person. Like, online's great, and a lot can be done online. You can form great friendships and relationships, but local is also really good to facilitate really powerful healing.
Well, especially for safety embodiment too. It's really cool.
For sure. Yeah. Laura, totally friend request Skyler.
Yeah.
Laura is a survivor and a very strong woman. I've known her, 6 years now. So yeah, thank you again, Skylar. And
Thank
if you wanna play again, like I'm totally open because these conversations are good and I think valuable for both of our audiences. So
Yeah, I would love that. And everybody, I will share your stuff too. But I think there's just such an intimate safety level that you develop with your clients. And so I would love anybody who is with me in my team and in my community to come and look at Jess's work because it makes my whole soul just like tingle with gratitude of safety. Like it's so important and it's so invaluable. And it's not coming from a space of therapy. It's coming from a space of community and of like, this is a
yes.
resource that needs to be here and you're doing that. And I'm just so thankful to be here. So, it makes me happy.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And Laura. And thank you guys for coming and listening and you guys watching the replay, like put some questions in there and we'll answer them.
Please do.
So cool. I'm shutting this down. Thank you, Skylar.
Bye.
Bye.